Hello, good evening. Gary Edward Geddle, psychologist, psychotherapist. Today is Thursday, the 5th of June, 2025. And I'm here in Lausanne, Switzerland, in my office. And here we are. And this evening, I'm going to talk about dealing with frustration. Interesting subject, very important to me because I've been dealing with frustration all day. And so we'll see where that takes us. So, as usual, I'll talk a little bit about my day so you know where I'm at, and you'll also understand why I'm talking about this evening. So, yesterday I had a recorded delivery of an important document from the state. I'm not sure which level of the state. It's not federation, but it's something to do with the state itself. But I have no idea what it is. And I've looked on the internet, and it's very, very unclear what this document might be. I don't think it's to do with asking for money unless it's a big fine for something that I've done drastically wrong that I'm not aware of, or I don't think it's the justice. So I don't think it's anything legal. So I really have no idea what it is. So it's very stressing, and it stresses me out a lot. So I decided that I would go to the post office this morning because the recorded delivery ticket that was left to me says that it will be available from today. So I went at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I arrived there just after a crowd of about 8, 9 people were already in the line waiting. And one person was at the counter only. Someone else was doing something else. Very frustrating. Seemed very frustrating. So I waited and waited and waited. So I waited for about 20 minutes to get to the window, and I showed the guy my ID, and I showed the guy the paper of the record delivery, and said, "Can I have my letter, please?" And he looked at it and looked in a very strange way. He said, "Oh, what's this?" He knows what it is. And he went and he looked in a shelf, and it wasn't there. And he asked someone else, and it wasn't there. And then he looked somewhere else, and he looked somewhere else, and he looked somewhere else. And he said, "I don't think it's here yet." So what do you mean it's not here yet? It says it will be here from tomorrow morning. That's today. How can it not be here? So, well, I can't help you. It's not here. And I was starting to feel frustrated. And I insisted that they redeliver it tomorrow to my office. And sort of was a little bit tough because I was irritated. And I excused myself for the time it took and for my tone to the rest of the people. That was already a big queue that was waiting behind me because it took a while. And I left. And I left feeling frustrated. And I thought, well, that's an interesting feeling, an interesting experience. Excuse me. So maybe that was something interesting to talk about today. So the rest of the day passed reasonably well. From time to time, I had a thought, what is in this letter? I wonder what it is. Is it problematical? Is it going to be something that I'm in trouble for? So I have no idea. And I reflected on how I was dealing with it, and I dealt with it in what I feel is a relatively appropriate way, thinking, well, it cannot be that important that I get it today or tomorrow, because especially things that are legal, if it's recorded delivery and I have so many days to respond, and the days start from the moment I sign for it. Now, the other problem is if it comes late on Friday afternoon, and it's too late to phone the administration or whoever it is if it's not clear, then I'm going to have to wait Saturday and Sunday. Monday is an official day off in Switzerland, so I would have to wait till Tuesday before I can actually find out what it's about. So that might be even more frustrating, but that we'll see when we get there. But just the same, it's important to reflect on how we deal with frustration. Now, as often happens when I have a theme in mind, one of my patients starts to talk about something that links to that, just the way it works. And so I had a patient that was talking about, I was talking about frustrations, and she said, yes, I've felt some big frustrations in my life. And then it occurred to me that there are different types of frustrations, and the size of frustration is something totally different. Because the frustrations she was talking about were life frustrations, things that lasted, things that repeated themselves. And I reflected with her that this is a totally different type of process, because that frustration is usually linked to a long-term situation, work or relationships or something of that type. Could even be a car. Actually, it doesn't work very well. But the point being is, in these cases, the cost benefits of dealing with that frustration are obviously quite expensive. So because if you're, for instance, you've got a car that keeps stopping and it doesn't work, then to actually take it to the garage to get it repaired maybe is very expensive for you in your life situation. Maybe it's expensive in time. Maybe you just can't spend the time to go to the garage, or maybe you know that it's going to have to be changed for a new car, and you don't have the means to get a new car. So the frustration of the car not working is balanced by the fact is that you don't have much choice but to keep with it. So that's another type of frustration. If you're in a relationship and your partner is frustrating you, and then yes, hopefully you'll talk to them, or you'll bring them to me, and I'll talk to them and see what we can do about it. But at the end of the day, sometimes that's just the way your partner is, and they're not going to change. And either you have to change your relationship by leaving them, or basically accept the way they are and still stay frustrated. So that's another possibility. But what I'm talking about are actually small frustrations, things that happen sometimes every day, sometimes several times a day, that we have to deal with. And that gives us food for thought. It helps us think about ourselves, the way we function, the way we operate, the way life is. And the 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 idea that came to mind as an example, something very, very simple, is that it's lunchtime. I go to the local bakery. I would like a tuna sandwich because that's what I fancy, and there ain't got none left. They're all gone. What do I do with that? So I have three choices. I either buy another sandwich, something else, or I don't have any sandwiches, or I go and look for another bakery. So those are the three basic choices of actions that one can have. But what does that mean for me as a person? And what is important is that when you look at, when you go and wish to have something, and you just cannot have it because it's not available, and then we need to, the first thing that gives us, it helps us clarify how important that thing is. Because the truth of the matter is, it might be more important to eat something than to have a tuna sandwich or not. So if I'm hungry and there's not many bakeries around, then I will buy another sandwich, because what is more important is to have something nice to eat, not necessarily the fancy of the tuna sandwich. So already, like, the tuna sandwich becomes much, much less important. However, if I'm going to buy a birthday present, say for instance, I want to buy a pink dress for my daughter. It's a birthday. She is 7 years old. She likes pink, and I want to buy her a dress. So for instance, I go to a shop and say, this is the size. Can I have a pink dress, please? And they say, sorry, we don't have any pink. We've got blue ones. Now, she doesn't like blue. So would I accept to be frustrated and still buy to buy a blue dress instead of a pink one? No, I wouldn't. Because it's clear for me that a blue dress won't cut it. A blue dress won't deal with it. So it helps me focus and say, how important is the exact object? How important is it to have something, or to have something now? Sometimes I go somewhere and I say, I want to buy something. An example doesn't come to my head at the moment, but it often appears that I need something now. And they offer me, they say, oh, well, we can have it for tomorrow. And I say, well, tomorrow's not going to cut it because I won't be here tomorrow. I'm going to go somewhere else. Or, for instance, the post. The post guy suggested I come back tomorrow morning to pick up my letter. And that's just not realistic. I'm not going to spend another hour wasting time. I also have something I have to take someone somewhere early in the morning. So it's just not actually practical or feasible. So the idea to wait for another moment. And one of the points with frustration, the frustration I'm talking about with small things, it's often linked to time. Because if I said, I want to tuna, I think I must be a bit hungry because I keep talking about this tuna sandwich. But anyway, it's there. And so I say, well, I really want a tuna sandwich. And he says, well, tomorrow we'll have more tuna sandwiches. And if you want, I'll put one aside for you. If you want to come a bit later, I'll make sure you've got one waiting for you. Maybe if I really want a tuna sandwich and there's no other bakeries, and I say, okay, I fancy a tuna sandwich, I'll have one tomorrow. That's a different system. It's a different way of coping, and we'll come to that. So timing is also very important in the question of frustration, because if it's something you need now and you can't wait and you don't want to wait, then it becomes much more important to say, okay, do I need this object and do I need this object now? So it helps clarify, helps us focus. We know where we are, what's important and what's not important, because we have to question ourselves on that. So also it helps with expectations, because sometimes our expectations are not realistic or not possible. Sometimes we want to buy something and it's not available in the moment. I wanted to buy a car when we had a lot more kids suddenly appeared, and I wanted to buy a big car that would take them all. And I got there and I chose the car and I booked the car, and then it was just around the COVID and it wouldn't arrive. It was like 8, 9 months I had to wait for that car. And it was just not within my expectations. Or what often happens is that it's not the price that one expects. A lot of sometimes I have patients that go for a holiday in America, and they come back and I say, "How was it?" It says, their prices are never their prices." I say, "What do you mean their prices?" I know what that is. I understand. It says, "I go there and it says it's $50, and I go to pay for it, and he says, "Oh, it's a 59.75." He said, "Well, how's it 59.75?" He says, "It's $50." Oh, well, there's state tax and there's income tax and there's this tax and that tax, and their expectations of how much it will cost is frustrating. And sometimes, what's interesting with frustration, it doesn't mean that you don't get what you want. Sometimes, if you have to pay more than you expect, that's also frustrating. It's also your expectations are not fulfilled for how much it's going to cost or how much effort something's going to be. I often have these little sort of do it yourself jobs, and I think, oh, it'll take me half an hour. Or I have every night I create thumbnails for my YouTube live talks, and this week I was talking about timing, and I thought what would be a wonderful way to talk how timing is important is to have an image of two trapeze artists. Someone that's sort of lancing themselves, throwing themselves into the air, and someone's attached to another trapeze that's going to catch them. Very simple idea. It shows how important timing is. And I go on my computer and go to where the programs that I have to create images, and I say, let's do that. Usually, an image takes me 5 or 10 minutes to generate. I write a text, it creates an image. It's not right. I rewrite the text. It's still not right. Usually, by about the 5th or 6th generation, I have exactly what I'm looking for, and that's fine. And then I go to another program and put text to it and put it together as a thumbnail, and that's fine. So generally, to create a thumbnail, both in English and in French, will take me 20 minutes, half an hour in total. For this image with the trapeze artist, I just could not get it right, because somehow these programs, and I tried several programs to actually have a trapeze artist that has their knees bent around the bar of a swing, just didn't work. Just somehow the computer programs just couldn't understand that. And they kept giving me different things. And as the time was passing, I was getting more frustrated. Now, what is one of the benefits of frustration is it can also lead to creativity. You can say, this isn't working, this isn't working. What can I do to make it work? And then our creativity comes into play. Now, this is interesting. So, what I did, just to shout out my creativity, is that I took all these images and said, well, I've got an image of somebody flying through the air, which isn't too bad. I've got an image of somebody ready to catch, even though the legs are attached to something doesn't make any sense. I thought, what happens if I take both these people images, take them out of context, create a new background, put these two people and the new background in such a way as you cannot see specifically the legs of the catcher. So the legs of the catcher were sort of off screen. And eventually I ended up with an image. But that was coping with my frustration through creativity. And it's a wonderful motor to be more creative when you're frustrated. And frustration can bring a lot of positive things that we don't expect. So we've dealt with the misaligned expectations when you expect something to be a certain way, and then the reality of life says, no, it can't be that way. That's just not going to happen. So you need to deal with the reality of the difference between your dream, your ideal, and the real. That's something I talk about with living in the real world, is where the ideal and the real need to come together, and when they don't come together, then we have problems with our expectations, and we suffer, and we're frustrated. So there we go. So one of the benefits is it builds emotional resilience. It says I cannot have what I want, when I want, how I want it. I will just have to deal with that. I'll have to accept that things are not the way I want, not the way I plan. They will be different, and I just have to deal with it. Suck it up, as the Americans often say. And this story with a letter, that I can't see what it is, I can't know what it is, I certainly can't deal with it, I have to wait till tomorrow, helps me to become stronger as a person. It helps me be more resilient, because I need to say to myself, it's not that important, I will cope with it, I'll see to it. When it arrives, it'll be okay. It's not that important. And even if it is important, I'll find a way to deal with it. So it helps to build resilience, help us to see things in a bit more distance, and to accept. Now, also with that is the question of patience and process. Because as I keep mentioning, small frustrations are often linked to time and to timing. That if you will wait another day, I can have my tuna sandwich. By waiting by tomorrow, hopefully I'll have this letter from the post. I waited 8 months. I got my car eventually. These things do generally sort themselves out with time. So that's something that we need to learn, and that's something hopefully we learn as a child, because often we want something in the moment, and the parent says you can't have it now. You can't eat that sweet now. You can't have that toy now, and other things when we start doing our studies is that you need to learn this because you're going to have a test, and when you pass your test, you'll get something that is of value or of interest, or just the satisfaction or the praise. So we need to be aware that we need to have patience. We need to go through the process, and sometimes The process takes longer than we expected. It's more parts of it or something that's a stage in the process blocks us. For instance, I'm getting my terrace um, tidied up, I would say, and I've been waiting weeks and weeks for the guy to become available to help me to do the things that need to be done, which I can't do myself. So already we're working on that. I need to accept that there are stages in this work for this terrace that need to happen, and they can't go any further until someone else does certain things that I'm waiting for. So again, we need to accept the process. So that's something that we can all do, and it's just a question of releasing and letting go, which is actually the final lesson that we learned. There's other ones that I've missed out for the moment. Maybe I'll come back to them. Is that it's not the same as giving up, because giving up is permanent. And as I've said, that very often with frustrations is giving up for the moment. Is saying it's not now, it's going to be later. It's I need to do this first or do it that way. And that giving up is giving up in the moment and saying, now is not the moment, I can't have it now. I will have it at some other point, or I will have it when something else has happened and things go forward. Because if we have to give something up that's important, then it's not a frustration. It's a form of bereavement. It's a loss. And we're not talking about loss. We've done things about loss in other days. And this is just frustration. It's coping with not having what you want, the way you want it, how you want it now. And all those factors, any of those factors, if they're not there the way that you expect them and you wish for them, will cause this feeling of frustration. Now, as I've said, frustration can bring creativity. It can help us to learn patience and to work on a process. It can help build resilience that I can wait, I can hold on. It's not something that I need to have straight away. It helps us with focus and commitment. It helps us know that is this really something important? It's not just a question of will I let this go or will I choose something else? It can say, if it's really something of importance, then I will deal with my frustration and I will accept the fact that I have to wait or I have to do this or the other. I want to do this work on this terrace. This work on terrace is important to me. So the fact that the guy that I've been hoping and, well, we've organized now that he will come quite soon, the fact that I've had to wait weeks for him to come um, shows how much it's important to me. Because I could just say, "Oh, it's not really important. I'll do something else with the terrace, and it'll be fine." So it also it shows the importance. So it's not just the clarity of is it this thing or another thing, or can I change it for this or for that. It shows the clarity that is this a project that is worth for me to deal with my frustration, or do I let it go? In which case, I accept the loss and then maybe I'll go for something else which is different. So it's helpful for that. Also, um, if we are slightly more than just frustrated for relatively small things, then that can actually show that there is another problem that's hiding behind that experience of frustration. For me, for instance, um, there was a level of fear with this letter, this recommended letter from the authorities. So there's a certain fear that something bad is in that, something bad will happen, and the sooner I can deal with it, the sooner I can alleviate that fear and maybe avoid something awful happening. Or there is a fear that if you do not succeed, whatever it is that you're trying to get, then someone else will either be disappointed or angry with you. So this feeling of frustration actually isn't the fact that you're frustrated, it's that deep down you're concerned about the reaction of someone else and you don't really want to talk about it. For instance, you're in a traffic and you're going to be late for an appointment. And yes, you're frustrated because the lights are not changing, because there's been an accident. Yes, you're frustrated about that. But maybe what is behind that is the fact is you have an important appointment, and if you're late for that appointment, you could have problems of that sort of thing. So we have to also use this feeling of frustration sometimes to mirror ourselves back to say, well, what is actually this frustration covering up? Why am I feeling so frustrated for something that's not really important? Sometimes I'm driving somewhere and there's a problem. There's something blocked, there's roadworks, there's a queue, there's this, that, the other. And I say, oh, I'm blocked, I'm frustrated. And then I say, well, yeah, but what's the rush? What's the hurry? You're in the car, you're listening to some nice music, the weather's fine. So it takes 5, 10 minutes later, and the frustration totally disappears. It becomes another experience that is acceptable. And that's just melted away because the importance of whatever it is that I had to wait for loses its interest. Now, if I have a meeting and I'm trying to get a new job, and I'm going to arrive 10 or 15 or 20 minutes late for my interview, that could destroy all possibility of getting that job being so late. So it's not the frustration of being blocked in traffic, it's the fear of not getting a job that creates that strong reaction. And we also have the our own self-image, and that sometimes if something that we expected or to do something in a way that we expected, we'll do it and we don't succeed, and then that reflects badly on us. And if we're a bit of a perfectionist, if we have a self-image that is based on our successes and we don't succeed the way that we planned and we dreamt that we would succeed, again, if the ideal of ourselves and the reality of ourselves have a difference and a distance, that suffering is what I call sin, and I'll explain that in another time. You read one of my books that explains very clearly. Living in harmony with the real world is where your ideal and the real join together. And so if they separate because you just do not succeed to do things the way or when or how you plan to do, and then your ideal of yourself is distant from the reality of how things are, if it's not too great, then that suffering is expressed as frustration. But maybe behind it, it's a bit of a perfectionist and you're not satisfied with yourself. So that's also something that's worth looking at, dealing with as a theme. And now, just to finish off, I'll take a few minutes extra because ChatGPT and I together have written a poem about frustration. And I just thought, just for the fun of it, this is my intelligence classes, so I understand. So, just for the fun of it, today is a day of frustrations. My ChatGPT and Gary Edward Geddo, we've written it sort of together. Just get that off there. Today is a day of frustrations, unnecessary blocks, complications. Nothing is easy, everything's cheesy, and don't ask for explanations. My shoelace broke and my zip got stuck. I dropped my keys in the puddle of muck. I smiled at a stranger who gave me a glare. Then I waved to a lamppost. Yeah, no one was there. Emails are bouncing. My Wi-Fi is slow. My brain took a break about 3 hours ago. My Zoom call froze with a glorious face. Mouth mid-yawn. Frozen disgrace. The gym was closed. My cat scratched my nose. The dog ate my notes. At least I suppose. The kettle won't boil. My pen has leaked ink. And I'm starting to teeter right over the brink. But hey, I'm alive, I can breathe, I can scream into space. I can laugh at the madness that life throws in my face. For today might be messy, imperfect, insane, but I've danced through worse in the pouring rain. So cheers to the chaos, the flops and the fails. Tomorrow's new winds might just fill my sails. But for now, I'll just grin, take a deep breath, and say, today there's frustrations, but hey, I'm okay. Just for a bit of fun. So today's Thursday, and tomorrow's Friday. It's a day off, so there's no live. Saturday is an important day for me. I'm going to talk about how to deal with aggressive people. And I'm going to use a lot of my own personal experiences that I have succeeded to deal with difficult people, aggressive people in positive ways, well, positive for me anyway. And so it'll be worth you to look at. That will be at 4:30 p.m. on Saturday, CEST, Central Eastern Summertime. Sunday, we're again at the 8:30 p.m. slot. Sunday now is guided meditations or hypnosis, depending on how you wish to take it. And then, as usual, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 8:30 p.m. at CEST. I will be talking about something hopefully interesting. We'll see what comes up. Other than that, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Everything I do is free for the moment. And I hope to see you on Saturday.